Joining us in studio now is Ayaz Manji, the Director of Operations from the Kenya Red Cross. Thank you so much for joining us. Not a very good picture for the Red Cross, at least on the ground, from this report by Enoch Sikolia. Just what happened, especially for the construction of that dam in Baringo?
I think, Victoria, we need to go back to what K4K was really about. You know, if we remember what K4K was, it was a 1 billion shillings raised by the public through quite a public appeal. We all participated. I'm sure all of us gave some money into it. 1 billion was the value of the appeal. 300 million of that was services given in kind. For instance, even the media gave us services in kind. Artists, local artists gave us services in kind. People who were fueling trucks that were going for food. So that was in kind support. Which left about 700 million left.
In hard cash?
Yes.
Okay.
At that time, K4K was dealing with two issues. We were dealing with one, a humanitarian emergency. If we remember, 3.5 million people were starving to death at that time. 20 deaths were noted at that time. And that was like the worst drought in 60 years. So almost 350 million of that was diverted into immediate humanitarian assistance. We did school feeding programs. We did a lot of nutrition work. We had to scale up these nutrition parameters. And the other 350 million that was left, we agreed with the Secretariat. And the Secretariat was independent of Kenya Red Cross. It was private sector. It was chaired by Bob Kolimo. It was quite a professional in it. We agreed we would do 3 pilot projects that could show how drought can be dealt with in the long term.
Right.
Those 3 projects, if you can remember, were Kaikor, which is in Turkana North, another one in Walda, in Moyale, and CHESIRIMION. Okay? 350 million now, if you go back to that time, the genesis of that was in Kaikor. So the majority of that money, almost about 120 million, was given to Kaikor as a priority. And then the other place that had a lot of livestock deaths was Walda, where we also gave about 120 million as well. And we had only about 117 million, something like that, for CHESIRIMION. At the time when we started our work in CHESIRIMION, the issue was to look for an area where we could get a water source. Anyone who goes to Baringo, and especially in Tiati, will tell you the issue is really water, more than anything else. So we looked at it and we said, okay, what are the sources of water we can get around here? We mapped 3 different zones which we could dam. This was actually the biggest of the lot. And we said, okay, let us invest money into that.
Right.
Now, we spent 117 million. It's true. We've had those audited accounts. We've even published those audited accounts. They're on our website and they've been there since 2013. That 117 million was used to construct the dam with an intention that we could also do irrigation. But the first thing that we wanted to do was secure water for livestock.
So was 117 million enough for the dam and irrigation project?
It was enough for the dam and that pipeline that you see. That pipeline that you see is a GN, what we call a GI pipe. It's a galvanized iron pipe. It's a fairly expensive pipe to put. It's a 200 diameter. So I know you're not engineers, but basically it's a very expensive pipe to put. So at the time we conceived it, we said, at least let us put the dam and the pipeline, and then whatever money would then be able to be raised later, because there was going to be a phase 2, would then connect to that pipeline.
So what you're saying, Ayaz, is the money ran out? The
money ran out, yes.
Oh, and
what was allocated to it was what we could do with that money.
The concern is something that you mentioned, that there was going to be a part 2 to raise more money.
Absolutely.
And Kenyans are just tired of raising money every single time we have a drought. And the bigger question becomes, when will we stop having to have these appeals and deal with long-term solutions? This dam was one of those long-term solutions,
Absolutely.
Which has fallen flat. Why is that?
Well, I don't think it's fair to say it's fallen flat, because let's look at the facts. Victoria, the fact is this: livestock till today is getting water in that dam. If you look in the environment of that dam, lots of water pans have dried up. Just similarly, the way we had this lady on the clip saying she did not understand the dam, but I can bet you if you ask them, has the dam ever run dry? They'll tell you no. We get what? About 40,000 heads of goats and sheep, and about 10,000 heads of cattle coming every day. And as I speak right now, as far as a radius of 20 kilometers, livestock come to that dam to water even today in the height of the drought, well, in the height of the dry spell. And As far as Mondi and Tangul Bay, we have now livestock coming in we have to manage it as well, because we have to manage these communities sharing the resource without having conflict. But I don't think it's fair to say that project had no result.
Yes, there's another project called the Tot-Koloa irrigation scheme, also in Boringo. 100 million shilling project, 500-acre piece of land with dry pipes.
Yes.
More than 1,000 people were allocated land to farm. The project collapsed 2 years after the first harvest.
Yes. So Jeff, let me give you the facts on that too. So this is a project that takes the Marakwets and the Pokots together. Traditionally, we know there's conflict between these two communities. At the beginning of this project, Jeff, we actually got a peace treaty signed between these two communities. Abbas Gulet himself, with the local leaders, went there, and we did a traditional ceremony where they agreed that they would be able to share this. We did 500 acres in Marakwet, 250 acres in Marakwet, 250 acres in Tot. And the water comes from the highlands of Marakwet. That project actually ran for 2 years. We had plenty of produce. But again, conflict struck out. Once conflict comes, Jeff, things are difficult to control. And
so it was out of your control then?
Yes, it was out of our control. But in as much as we would want to sit here and judge the project, what we need to say is that if we want such kind of livelihood interventions to take place, it's dependent on weather, it's dependent on communities, it's dependent on political leadership as well. We have to agree as Kenyans, I mean, I'm a Kenyan as well, right? That at some stage we have to draw a line and say, look, if we want these things to be an end, you just said that, Victoria, we have to agree that we have to work together. Take CHESIRIMION for an example. It was handed over. We talked to the county government. We wanted them to invest into an irrigation setup. And I think the goodwill was there. That time, Honorable Cheboy was the governor. Right. But, you know, you take some time because you have other priorities. And at that time, we were discussing doing 4 more dams because this is the way to develop Boringo. You just have to trap that water that's available.
And beyond those factors that you mentioned, the community buy-in, the political will, maintenance of those projects, what will it really take so we don't have to keep coming back to, you know, Abbas Gulet the other day was asking for over 800 million shillings.
Sure.
What will it take for us not to have these appeals anymore?
Okay. So, Victoria, Jeff, let's put some things in context. Drought has been something that we've been dealing with since independence, okay? The thing that is disturbing is the Kenyans for Kenyans was a way to show that we can end drought. Not with mega projects. I mean, we're not government. We can't do 7 billion, 20 billion shilling dams. And we would never dream to do such. But what we do is these medium to small scale projects that we believe small communities you deal with one at a time, okay? Now, coming back very quickly, you asked me how could we put this aside? Well, let's reflect on this. 350 million shillings. Ladies and gentlemen, you can't even build a building in Nairobi for that amount of money, just to put it in context. Because what the rhetoric is now, that should have dealt with drought permanently. It cannot happen. We need continuous, sustained investment in such kind of projects. Not that Kenya Red Cross would be the only one to do it, but if we could all align ourselves. The country has this thing called Ending Drought Emergencies, which is a framework. And if you read it, it talks about projects like this being done countrywide. But it also needs county governments to be aligned. It needs central government to be aligned. It needs the people to own it. And remember one last thing. We're talking about changing lifestyle of people who've been doing pastoralism for the longest you can imagine. It's almost like you saying, today you're a news anchor, well, tomorrow I want you to be a banker. It will take you some time. So you put it in that context as well. When you transform communities, you have to transform them over a period of time.